Hey everyone, this is Mario again, coming at you with another entry in Monster Fest 2012. I bet before I start this review, I bet a lot of you are wondering, why are you in a dress shirt and why is your hair like that? Well, it's because I went to a birthday party. My family live over in Fullerton, which is outside of Riverside County. So I dressed up in this. I just got home. It's a little after 8 now. I decided, well, I've never recorded a review like this, so I might as well do it for a change of pace. The moment this review is over, this is coming off. But anyway, today's review is a movie that I've always loved ever since I was a kid. It's a movie that's basically a tribute to the old school B movies while still being sort of fresh and having a great cast. It's some very good effects, and it's the first of a series which has been ended almost 10 years, but I really do wish Universal would cough up the money and make the 5th film that they have a script for. I mean, if they're going to do a TV series, they might as well do a 5th film. But film, of course, I'm talking about is the 1990 film directed by Ron Underwood, starring Kevin Bacon, Fred Ward, Finn Carter, Reba McEntire, Michael Gross, and Victor Wong. And, of course, the movie is Tremors. Now, this is the attack pack that comes with the 4 films. Tremors 1, Tremors 2, Aftershocks, Tremors 3, Back to Perfection, and Tremors 4, The Legend Begins. Of course, it's one of the few films I actually have the cover for, and right there it has all 4 posters, which I'm happy it does. I'd actually like to get a poster of the first movie or the second movie, because I like those 2 posters. They're so cool. But anyway, the idea of this film originated when I think it was S.S. Wilson. He was at the time doing movies and something for the Navy. He was sitting on a rock, and he thought to himself, what would happen if I was sitting on this rock and there's something underneath the ground keeping me from getting up? So he put the idea in the back of his head and eventually started to write out a screenplay, which was originally called Beneath Perfection, which they eventually changed to Tremors, and that's how we got it. And of course, him and Brent Maddock, or the writers, they came up with the idea and stuff. Ron Underwood, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I watched special features, so I don't remember entirely how he was brought in, but I know he liked the idea, so he decided to go with it. And I know at one point he didn't want to make the graboids dry. He wanted to be all dry, which I could see why, but wetness works, I will say. Now, there are deleted scenes in the movie too, which I have actually read them a little bit in the screenplay, but I can understand why they were deleted, especially the ending, which I will address. Now, the plot of the movie is that we got 2 buddies, Val and Earl, played by Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward. They are handymen. Handyman Earl, we are handymen. And they work in Perfection, Nevada, which is an isolated ex-mining settlement that contains only about 14 residents. Among them, we got the general store owner, Walter Chang, played by Victor Wong. The survivalist couple, Burt Gummer and his wife, Heather, played by Michael Gross and Reba McEntire. And, of course, they got some other people. And, of course, new in town, we got Rhonda LeBeck, played by Finn Carter, who is a graduate student in geology, or more specifically, seismology. And, of course, she's noticing there's some anomalies going on. Well, when Val and Earl decide to leave town, they find 2 of the people murdered, or at least so they say they're murdered. And as they try to get out of town, they're blocked off. So they go back to town and they just see something attached to their truck once they get there. It looks like a snake. So they know there's a creature there. And so one day Walter decides to send them out on his horses. And that's when they run into these things and see that they're bigger than they thought they were. And of course, they're so big though when they come from under the ground that it's going to be tough to deal with them, because conventional firearms might not work on them. And from there, it's just the town trying to survive against these things, hold them at bay while trying to escape. Now, like I said, it is kind of a homage and tribute to the old school B movies, because the plot is something like, you would think of it, but it's not done in the same B movie style. It's actually done with a budget. This is why I think that there should be more movies that have a B movie plot with a budget, but give it a cast that actually knows what they're doing, give them good effects, and a director that's capable. That's why I miss movies like this, and I wish we had more monster movies like this. Shows monster movies can work. Now, the special effects, I don't remember who they were done by off the top of my head, but they were perfect. Practical effects. Another epic example of why practical effects are going to always be superior to CGI. Granted, I know the show and the sequels use a little CGI, but only when they have to. I mean, it's kind of hard to do a practical effect of a weird creature running unless you do it like a puppet miniature. which might look a little bit better depending on how you do it, but if you have a low budget, you gotta do what you gotta do. But the movie had an $11 million budget, and I could see a majority of that budget up on the screen. I know a lot, like probably a couple million of it went to the cast and crew, but I could see the rest of it being up there on the screen. And it made around $50 million. It wasn't as big a hit as they wanted it to be, but it made money on more money on home video and TV and stuff, enough to garner a direct-to-video 3 direct-to-video sequels and a TV series, which, as you guys all know from my review on the TV series, I wish they had actually let it go full season before deciding to cancel it. But that's just me. And I'm happy to report that critics did love this movie. It currently has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and last I checked it had like around almost over a 7.1 on IMDb, so it has a fan base too. I mean, it has sequels, so it does. Now, the acting, the chemistry between Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward is good. You really do believe these two men are best friends, and they're flipped for it. You can't leave them up there. It makes me wish that Kevin Bacon had been in the sequel, but get what we get. It also makes me wish that Bacon and Ward had actually been in more movies together, but you never know. Michael Gross as Burt Gummer, perfect casting. I mean, before this, it was kind of like Michael Gross is, I mean, the father from Family Ties is a survivalist. Come on, but he really is pretty good, and he has one of my favorite moments in the movie, the kill of the graboid in his basement, and he has one of my favorite lines in the movie. Broke into the wrong goddamn rec room, didn't you, you bastard? And just his delivery, I mean, they're leaning against the wall after they kill it, and then he says it. I mean, that's a trailer-worthy line. I'm surprised it wasn't in the trailer. They could have had it in there, like, even if it's just the audio, like, he breaks through it, broke into the wrong goddamn rec room. That would have been cool. But it's a good line. Reba McEntire, if I remember correctly, this is her first acting performance, and she actually does a pretty good job. She's one of those singers that actually transitioned into acting pretty well, so it shows she did have some talent. But I also think she, not one of those people like, I'll do what I want to do. I think she actually did decide to learn from the actual professional actors, which, if that's the case, more of those singers or other people who transition into acting need to do that. I mean, like Rihanna and all them, they need to at least take notes from the professional actors who do this for a living, not just people who are transitioning into it. Victor Wong, grandfather from Three Ninjas, he was very good as Walter Chang, and it's sad what happens to him in the movie. Let's see, Tony Girano as the character Miguel, very good as well. Finn Carter as Rhonda, she did a very good job, and you can tell that I love the little sexual tension between her and Bacon's characters, and by the end of the movie you really want them to kiss, and I'm glad they do. Robert Jane as Melvin, perfect casting for a little snot-nosed punk, and it's funny when he gets the goo on him, and of course how Bert tricks him. Bert, you asshole, there's no bullets in this gun! Got you moving, didn't it? And I actually say I do like the direction they took his character with in the second sequel, but that's another movie. And of course, the secondary characters, Nancy and Mindy, they're actors too, okay? You believe them in their role. Now, Ron Underwood, this was his first movie, but from how he directed it, you couldn't tell this was his first movie, and it just shows he was a talented director. I mean, the only other movies of note he's done was the remake of Mighty Joe Young. He did City Slickers. He did a movie called Heart and Soul, which I'm not really that familiar with, but I'm checking it out right now. Robert Downey Jr. was in it, Charles Grodin was in it, I did not know. I've never heard of this movie. Got a Saturn Award. This is the movie he did right after Tremors, maybe after City Slickers. Maybe I'll look it up one day. Then, of course, in the early 2000s, he did The Adventures of Pluto Nash. That's basically a career killer. Then after that, he did Stealing Sinatra. He did Santa Baby 1 and 2, which that's mostly what he's been doing lately, is TV stuff like The Year Without a Santa Claus. But that's kind of sad. He should be allowed to do more stuff that's going to get into theaters, because he is a talented director. He's just been given some crap projects. Well, the score was pretty well done. I liked how it had kind of a over Western theme, not like a Western approach, but it had like a feel that, it's like out in the desert type of feel. And it also had that adventurous B-movie type of feel to the score, but without it being, too obvious. Score was, it was done by two people, Ernest Troost and Robert Folk. Excuse me. And the movie's 96 minutes, and it moves at a pretty good pace. And even if they had kept those deleted scenes in the movie, it probably would have moved at that pace. But with the ending, I'm glad they changed it and actually overly showed that Rhonda and Val were going to get together instead of just hinting at it like the original ending did. And I can't really think of anything wrong with this movie. The effects still hold up. I love the characters. The acting's good. Everything in this movie still holds up 22 years later. Almost 23 years later, actually. It's one of those movies that I recommend you watch. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you do. And another thing about the movie, it's one of those movies that can blend genres together great, because it's horror, comedy, and it's science fiction all in a blender. And it's one of the reasons why I actually prefer, with as time goes on, I would like to see more genre blending movies. This is a textbook example of how you blend genres together correctly, because it's comedy, but it's not like a satire or self-awareness. The humor comes from the characters' reactions and stuff, and their lines and stuff. It's humor that it's kind of, I wouldn't say situation. I'd say it borders on being situational almost, but without being situational, if that makes any sense. But it's a film, like I said, that if you're a fan of horror films, if you love comedies, it's a film you are required to see. My rating for Tremors is 5 out of 5. And if you get your hands on it, I say get the Attack Pack, if you just are for curiosity's sake. But if you've already seen the films and you only want to get the first one, I say get the first DVD, because outside of the Attack Pack, they're each available on independent DVDs, but I actually wanted to get this for collector's sake, because I actually like all 4 films to an extent, but those other 3 will have to wait for other videos.